Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to believe betrayal announced itself loudly. A lipstick stain on a shirt, a stranger's perfume on the collar, a sudden fight that left cracks too wide to ignore. Movies taught me that cheating was dramatic, explosive, impossible to miss. But in real life, betrayal is quieter. It creeps in like a draft through a cracked window, barely felt at first, until the whole house is freezing. Her name was Melissa, my wife of 9 years. We were the definition of stable. A modest home in a quiet Ohio suburb, 2 kids in elementary school, a golden retriever named Max, who shed on every piece of furniture. We weren't glamorous, but we were solid. At least, I thought we were. Our friends used to call us the steady couple. We weren't dramatic like them. We didn't split and reconcile every 6 months. We had routines, traditions, things that made us feel permanent. Friday night pizza, Saturday morning soccer practice, Sunday barbecues in the backyard. Melissa laughed easily back then, laughed in a way that made me feel like home wasn't just walls, it was us. But routines can hide rot. The first sign came on for a Thursday night in June. I was in the living room, scrolling mindlessly through emails, when Melissa went upstairs early, said she was tired. That wasn't unusual. She always carried the stress of work and the kids like it was welded to our shoulders. But her phone stayed behind, charging in the kitchen. That was unusual. Melissa never left her phone. She took it to the bathroom, kept it on the counter while folding laundry, even brought it to bed and claimed she needed it as an alarm. It was practically an extension of her hand. So when I heard the buzz echo from the kitchen, I froze. I told myself not to look. I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her. But trust is fragile and curiosity is heavier than people admit. I walked into the kitchen. One notification lit the screen. A name I didn't recognize. The preview read, "Wish I could taste you again already." My breath caught in my throat. At first, I thought it had to be spam, some weird marketing scam. But my gut told me otherwise. The wording was too specific, too intimate. Melissa had been in bed for 10 minutes by then. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge. I stood there staring at that phone like it had grown teeth. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The fact that it was there, on her screen, was enough. When I lay in bed beside her later, she was turned away from me, her hair spilling across the pillow. She breathed steadily, peacefully. She looked like a woman who hadn't detonated a bomb in her husband's chest just 30 minutes earlier. Sleep didn't come from me that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something shifting. By morning, I had convinced myself to calm down. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a wrong number. But doubt is poison. It doesn't need proof to kill trust. The next day at work, I logged into our shared cell phone plan. Melissa didn't know I managed the account. I scrolled through the list of numbers tied to her phone. Most I recognized: family, friends, co-workers. But one number stood out. The same number from the text. And it wasn't random. It was already listed on the account as an emergency contact. I frowned, double-checking. That number belonged to someone tied to my dad's profile. See, my father had remarried a few years ago to a woman 15 years younger. She was lively, glamorous, always glued to her phone. She had a brother Melissa had accidentally met at a family barbecue last summer, and now my wife was texting him things that made my skin crawl. That night, Melissa acted normal. She cooked dinner, laughed at something on TV, kissed the kids goodnight. She even kissed me, quick and thoughtless, like habit. I kissed her back, but inside I felt something sharp, not just jealousy, betrayal. The betrayal of not just a marriage, but of family lines crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. I lay awake again, listening to her steady breathing, feeling like I was sharing a bed with a stranger. That's when I knew this wasn't just a slip, or stress, or some misinterpreted text. This was the beginning of a double life, and I was going to find out just how deep it went. Once you let doubt in, it eats at everything. Breakfast conversations turn into interrogation practice. Every time Melissa left the room to take a work call, I memorized the time, the tone of her voice, the way she smiled afterward. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Anger burns fast. I needed patience. Patience cuts deeper. So I started documenting. At first, it was simple. I made notes in my phone. Thursday, 8:42 p.m. Phone buzzed. Lock screen. Smile afterward. Saturday, 11:17 a.m. Said she was going to Target. Gone for 2.5 hours. Came back with one grocery bag. Then I moved to photos. Receipts she left in her purse. Wine glasses with lipstick that wasn't from dinner with me. A train ticket stub for Cleveland. Even though she swore she'd been working from home that day. It didn't take long before the evidence became undeniable. Melissa wasn't just busy. She was living another life. One phone call, one excuse, one lie at a time. The first real crack came on a Tuesday night. Melissa said she was working late. I kissed her cheek as she left, pretending like nothing felt wrong. But instead of watching TV like usual, I grabbed my keys and followed her car. She didn't drive to her office. She didn't even head toward the city. Instead, she drove 30 minutes south to a hotel just off the interstate. Not the kind of place where business deals happen, the kind of place where affairs thrive. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up, and out stepped him, my father's brother-in-law, the man from the barbecue. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Melissa got out of her car, walked toward him, and before they even reached the entrance, they kissed. Not the quick kind. Not the kind you could mistake for anything but hunger. My stomach twisted, but my mind sharpened. I raised my phone and took the first photo. Proof. They disappeared into the hotel. I didn't follow. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing windows, imagining what was happening behind them. Every laugh, every touch, every lie shed, whispered, replayed in my head. When she came home past midnight, she smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. She kissed me on the cheek. I let her, but inside, something cracked so quietly it didn't make a sound. From that night forward, I became an investigator. I tracked her calendar changes, meetings that moved last minute, yoga classes that always ran late. I matched them to phone records, credit card charges, GPS pings from her smartwatch she thought I never checked. It was almost surgical, and with every piece of evidence, I felt calmer, not because I accepted it, but because I controlled it. One Saturday, she claimed she had a leadership workshop. I smiled, wished her luck, carried her suitcase to the trunk myself. As soon as she drove off, I packed my own bag and followed. The conference center she mentioned, she never went there. Instead, she drove straight to a cabin rental by the lake, and he was already waiting. I watched from a distance as they carried groceries inside, laughing like teenagers sneaking out of class. At one point, she leaned on his shoulder, wearing the hoodie he'd given her on our 5th anniversary. She looked happier than he'd seen her in years. I snapped photos, wrote down times, dates, details. I wasn't documenting for revenge. Not yet. I needed to prove to myself that this wasn't paranoia, that I wasn't crazy. Because when the person you love betrays you, reality bends. You start doubting your memory, your instincts, even your worth. But the photos, the receipts, the screenshots, they were anchors. Proof that what I felt was real. The hardest part wasn't watching her lie. It was acting like I believed her. She'd come home glowing, humming, dropping her suitcase by the door. She'd tell me about seminars, workshops, dinners with colleagues. She even printed fake itineraries, color-coded with bullet points. I smiled. I nodded. I kissed her forehead. And inside, I sharpened the knife of silence. The breaking point came one night when she thought I was asleep. She whispered into the phone, her voice low but playful. "He's still here, but not for long. Don't worry, baby. He'll fade out eventually." Fade out. That's what I was to her. A candle burning itself down. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to fade. I was going to disappear. And when I did, she'd choke on the silence I left behind. When you carry the truth long enough, it feels like a weapon. Heavy, sharp, waiting to be unsheathed. I had enough evidence to crush Melissa's double life 100 times over. Photos, receipts, timelines, even her own words whispered in the dark. But destroying her outright wasn't enough. Betrayal like hers needed exposure. So I planned the stage. It was a Friday evening when I told her I wanted to cook dinner. Just the two of us. A reset. She looked at me with those careful eyes, the ones that always measured if I was buying her lies. She smiled anyway, kissed my cheek, and said it sounded perfect. What she didn't know was that I had invited guests. Her parents, my father, his wife, and yes, her lover, the brother-in-law who thought he could sneak into my marriage like a thief. The night of the dinner, I set the table with candles, wine, pasta steaming in bowls. Melissa came downstairs in a dress I hadn't seen in years, the one she wore the night we bought this house. She looked almost nervous, almost hopeful. She didn't expect the doorbell. Her smile faltered when she saw her parents walk in. Confusion clouded her face when my father and his wife followed. But when the last guest stepped in, the man she'd been sneaking away to meet, her whole world cracked. Her wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. What is this? No one answered. They all sat, silent, waiting. I placed a folder on the table, outspilled the evidence. Photos of Melissa kissing him outside the motel, credit card charges, screenshots of messages, the fake itineraries she thought were bulletproof. Her mother gasped. Her father's jaw clenched. My father's wife went pale. And the lover, he stared at the floor, hands trembling. But the twist came when my father shifted uncomfortably, because in the pile of documents, there was more than Melissa's betrayal. See, during my digging, I hadn't just found her affair. I had stumbled onto financial records, money being transferred quietly between accounts. My father's wife had been moving funds, covering weekends at the lake, dinners, hotels. It wasn't just Melissa cheating. It was a conspiracy. My wife and my father's sister-in-law had been working together, Melissa with her affair, and the sister-in-law covering it with money siphoned from my father. Two betrayals, woven into one. Melissa's face drained of color. This isn't what it looks like, she stammered. Her lover tried to speak, but I cut him off with a glare that turned his words to ash. I looked at Melissa, then at my father's wife. It's exactly what it looks like, and now everyone sees it. The silence was thick, broken only by Melissa's sobs. Her father asked me quietly, "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to stop doubting myself. Long enough to know this marriage ended months ago. Tonight is just a burial." I slid divorce papers across the table. Signed, dated, final. Melissa collapsed into her chair, shaking, mascara running down her face. She whispered, "Please, Daniel, don't do this. Don't destroy us like this." I leaned back, calm as stone. "You destroyed us. I'm just showing the truth." Her parents left first, silent, faces heavy with shame. My father stayed, staring at the woman he thought he could trust. He didn't say a word when he finally stood and walked out. His steps, heavy like betrayal, weighed him down. Melissa remained, broken, whispering apologies into the empty air. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because sometimes the loudest revenge is silence. That night, I packed a bag and left, not in anger, not in chaos, but in peace, because the war had already been fought and had won by refusing to play her game. The thing about truth is it doesn't just end a story, it ripples. Once it's exposed, it spreads, touching everyone connected to it, changing how they look at the past and how they step into the future. After that dinner, nothing was the same. Melissa moved out within a week. She stayed at her sister's place across town. She tried to reach me, texts, emails, even handwritten letters slid under my apartment door. All of them sounded the same, apologies wrapped in desperation. But every word rang hollow. How do you apologize for dismantling a life brick by brick? I didn't respond. Silence was my answer. And silence, I knew, cut deeper than rage ever could. Her lover disappeared too. His arrogance collapsed under the weight of exposure. My father's wife left soon after, unable to face the fallout of her part in covering it up. My dad didn't talk about it much. He just looked older, like betrayal had carved years into his face overnight. As for Melissa's parents, They couldn't even look me in the eye the last time we crossed paths. I think they blamed themselves. Or maybe they simply couldn't reconcile the daughter they raised with the woman who sat at that table. Exposed and broken. Me. I rebuilt. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. It was small steps. Waking up in my own apartment, free from the weight of lies. Cooking breakfast without wondering why dinner smelled like another man's cologne. Taking walks with Max, the only loyal soul left untouched by deceit. And slowly, the silence I once feared became my peace. Months later, Melissa tried one last time. She showed up at my door, looking thinner, worn down, her voice trembling. "Daniel," she whispered, "I don't want to lose you. Please, just 5 minutes." I let her speak. I let her pour out every excuse, every tear, every promise. And when she finished, I gave her the only truth she deserved. "You already lost me. The night you called me a ghost in your life, you buried me. The difference is, I clawed my way back. You'll never get that chance." Then I closed the door, and that was the end. Not with shouting, not with revenge, but with silence that spoke louder than anything else ever could. If there's one thing betrayal taught me, it's this: it doesn't always explode. Sometimes it whispers, and if you're paying attention, those whispers will tell you everything you need to know. Melissa thought she could erase me with lies. Instead, I erased her with truth, and the truth set me free. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it hit you, if it made you think, remember this: you're not alone. Betrayal happens in silence, but healing comes in community. Subscribe to End Stories. New real confessions and betrayals drop every single day, and there's already plenty waiting for you to listen, reflect, and maybe even find a piece of yourself in them.